We're now going to learn how to arrange shapes. So let's return to slide 1, and in order to arrange these shapes in a more consistent way, as far as my screen versus yours, what we're going to do is show grid lines. And your screen doesn't have to exactly look like what mine eventually does, but if we go to the View tab, the Show Group, and then we click on Grid Lines, this will allow us to space the circles away from each other based on these squares that are created here. So let's start by clicking on Dublin, and let's place Dublin in its own set of 4 squares, like this. Okay, and I'm just using my arrow keys to move each of these circles around. And actually, just so that it's a little easier for us, let's change the dimensions of each of these circles. So let's click on Dublin first, and well, actually, just like we did before, just to speed this up a bit, let's click on Dublin, hold down Control, click on San Francisco, and then click on Perth, and then change each of the heights and widths to 2 inches, also known as 5 centimeters. Okay, so let's click on Dublin, and let's move Dublin so that it's within, again, its own set of 4 squares. And then for San Francisco, we'll click on that one next, and we'll use the arrow keys to move this one 1 square to the right, like this, and then we'll also make sure that half of its height is overlapping with Dublin, like so. And then for Perth, we'll just drag Perth to around this area, and then we'll make sure that Perth is below San Francisco, and that its right side is aligned with San Francisco's left side, like this. Okay, so again, you can see that, you know, whether your configuration is located this far to the left or maybe a little bit further to the right or above or below, the grid lines allow us to create a certain amount of consistency between our screens. Now let's add another shape. So let's go to the Insert tab, let's go to the Shapes group, and let's choose the rightward pointing arrow. Actually, again, let's not use our recently used ones. Let's use this under block arrows, this shape, arrow colon right, and we'll just click and drag. Don't worry about the dimensions just yet. And we're going to write, well, actually, first let's use a quick style. So under the Shape Format tab in the Shape Styles group, we're going to select the Colored Fill Orange Accent 2 color, which is right here. Okay, so we'll just choose that one. And then inside of this arrow, let's type the word New. And again, your arrow might look a little different than mine. That's totally fine. But let's actually rotate our arrow a bit, and I can do that by clicking on this rotation handle at the top of the shape. Just click on that and then rotate. Click and then drag, and then we'll have our new arrow pointing towards Perth. Now what I want to do, now that we know how to align the shapes based on grid lines, we don't need to worry about that anymore. Let's go to View, and then let's turn off our grid lines, and let's make sure that these shapes are overlapping with one another so that we can group them together into one larger shape. Okay, so technically we could group all of them together right now, you know, even though they're separated from one another. And by grouping them, it would mean that they just become one object that I can just drag around on its own. But just so that it makes a little bit more sense, let's make sure that they're overlapping and then group them together. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag San Francisco to right around here so that it's obstructed by Perth. Click and drag Dublin so that it's right around here. Okay, and so all of these together are going to be one object. So I'm going to click on the top left-hand corner of the slide. I could also just hold down Control and then click on each of the objects, you know, one at a time. But what's easier for me to do is just hover my cursor over to the top left, click and drag to select all the objects simultaneously, and then I'm just going to go to Shape Format, go to the Arrange group, and then click on the Group Objects option. Okay, so that's what I would use to group each of these together. If I want to ungroup them, then what I'll do is just go back to the Group drop-down menu and click on Ungroup. So for example, I might want to ungroup them because for whatever reason I want San Francisco to be the one that's further to the back, let's say. So if that were the case, then I could, now click on each of these shapes independently again, right? It doesn't matter that they're overlapping. They are independent. So I can click on San Francisco now, and if I want it to be sent to the very back, then I can go to the, again, Shape Format tab, Arrange Group, and then go to the Send Backward drop-down menu, and then choose Send to Back. Okay, Send to Back is going to put this object in the layer that is furthest back in the selection pane. Okay, if I click on the selection pane, I'll see that oval 4, which happens to be this San Francisco object that I'm selecting, is lowest on the list, meaning that it's in the furthest most back layer as far as these objects are concerned. Okay, great. And so if I want to return things to the way that they were, I can just select all of these objects again, go to Group, and then I can select this option right here, Regroup. Okay, and by regrouping, it's going to group these objects together in the way that they were before. Okay, so Group is just going to group them together based on how they look at the moment. Regroup is just going to group them based on whatever arrangement they were previously.